Does prayer truly have the power to heal, comfort, or change our circumstances? This is a question that has sparked countless debates, stirring the minds of the faithful and the skeptics alike. Many find solace in prayer, considering it a profound spiritual practice that connects them to a higher power, an omnipotent entity that listens, understands, and responds. They find it to be a source of strength, a beacon of hope in times of distress, and a tool for guidance in the intricate labyrinth of life. However, on the other side of the spectrum, skepticism looms. Doubters question the efficacy of prayer. They propose that prayer is nothing more than a psychological crutch, a comforting ritual devoid of any factual influence on our realities. So what does the truth look like? Is prayer a divine intervention or a mere placebo effect? Let's delve into the world of science and research to find the answers. Numerous studies have attempted to measure the effectiveness of prayer. It's a fascinating subject considering the intangible nature of prayer and the multitude of factors that can influence its perceived effectiveness. Let's start with a study conducted by the Harvard Medical School back in 2012. They performed a controlled experiment involving over 1,000 heart bypass surgery patients. Half of the patients were prayed for by strangers who had only the patient's first names. The other half did not receive such prayers. The results? There was no significant difference in the recovery of both sets of patients. In 2016, another study was carried out by the American Heart Journal. This time they took a different approach. They studied the effect of prayer on the health of cardiac patients. But instead of having strangers pray, they had the patients pray for themselves. The results were intriguing. The patients who prayed for themselves reported feeling more peaceful and less anxious. However, there were no measurable differences in their physical health outcomes. These studies highlight the challenge in measuring the effectiveness of prayer. They're dealing with something that's deeply personal and subjective. It's hard to quantify faith, belief, and the comfort that prayer can bring. Another aspect that complicates the picture is the placebo effect. For instance, if a person believes that prayer will help them, they might start feeling better simply because of that belief, not because of any divine intervention. There's also the question of how one measures the success of a prayer. Is it by the fulfillment of a specific request? Or is it by the sense of peace and comfort that it brings? These are all questions that make the science of prayer complex and hard to pin down. And let's not forget, many of these studies have been criticized for their methodologies, lack of control groups, and the difficulty in isolating prayer as a variable. The results, as you might expect, are quite varied and often controversial. But that doesn't mean the conversation should stop. It's through these discussions and studies that we continue to explore the fascinating intersection of faith and science. In many studies, it appears that the benefits of prayer may be more about the person's belief in its effectiveness. This is where the fascinating concept of the placebo effect comes into play. You see, the placebo effect is a psychological phenomenon where a person experiences a perceived improvement in their condition or well-being due to their belief in the effectiveness of the treatment, even when the treatment itself has no therapeutic value. It's like taking a sugar pill believing it's a powerful painkiller and then experiencing relief from pain. Remarkable, isn't it? Now let's draw parallels with prayer. When someone prays with conviction, they're essentially activating the same psychological mechanism as the placebo effect. They believe that their prayers will be answered, and this belief alone can trigger a sense of peace, hope, and positivity. This isn't to say that prayer is nothing more than a sugar-coated placebo. Instead, it's about understanding the power of belief and how it can influence our mental state and perception of reality. Consider this. When a person prays, they are often expressing their deepest hopes, fears, and desires. This act of verbalizing or mentally articulating one's feelings can be incredibly therapeutic. It's akin to talking to a friend, a therapist, or jotting down one's thoughts in a journal. It's a form of self-expression and emotional release that can alleviate stress and anxiety, thereby promoting a sense of well-being. Moreover, prayer can foster a sense of connection, either with a higher power, the universe, or one's own inner self. This in turn can foster a sense of purpose, meaning, and personal alignment, which are all crucial for psychological well-being. So, while the physical effects of prayer might be debatable, the psychological benefits are undeniable. The power of belief, it seems, can be just as potent, if not more so, than any divine intervention. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, There's no denying that our minds hold incredible power over our realities, and that in itself is a kind of miracle. But what about instances where prayer doesn't seem to work? Let's delve into the times where belief, hope, and prayer don't seem to yield the desired outcomes. There are several examples, both from scientific studies and anecdotal evidence, where prayer did not have the desired effect. For instance, there was a comprehensive study conducted by the Harvard Medical School over a decade ago. This study, involving nearly 2,000 cardiac bypass surgery patients, found that prayers offered by strangers did not reduce the patient's complications. In fact, some patients who knew they were being prayed for experienced a higher rate of post-operative complications, possibly due to performance anxiety. Similarly, another study published in the American Heart Journal, involving hundreds of patients admitted for heart failure, found no significant difference in recovery rates between those who were prayed for and those who were not. Beyond scientific studies, we have countless anecdotal instances where people have relied solely on prayer in times of severe health crises, sometimes with detrimental consequences. We've heard stories of individuals neglecting medical treatments, banking solely on the power of prayer, and unfortunately, their situations worsened. Such instances are not to discredit the personal comfort or sense of peace that prayer can provide. Instead, they highlight the potential dangers of relying solely on prayer, especially when it comes to serious, life-altering situations. It's essential to remember that prayer is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Moreover, these instances open up a broader conversation about the nature of prayer and its role in our lives. If prayer is not a guaranteed solution to our problems, then what is its purpose? Could it be that the power of prayer is not about changing our external circumstances, but rather about transforming our internal perspective? These instances challenge the notion of prayer as a universal solution. They push us to look beyond a simplistic understanding of prayer and engage with the complex, multifaceted nature of this spiritual practice. In the end, the effectiveness of prayer might be more complex than a simple yes or no answer. As we wrap up our journey through the intriguing world of prayer, it's essential to revisit some of our key insights. We started by scrutinizing faith, the very bedrock of prayer. We saw that prayer, for many, is a deeply intimate act of faith, a spiritual dialogue between the believer and the divine. And yet the nature of this faith can be as diverse as humanity itself. We then delved into the science of prayer, highlighting how it has been the subject of numerous studies with varying conclusions. Some researchers claim to have found a positive correlation between prayer and healing, while others have found no significant connection. The inconsistency of these results underscores the complexity of prayer and its potential effects. Next, we explored the power of belief, the subjective element that fuels faith. Belief can be a potent force, capable of influencing our perceptions and experiences. In the context of prayer, the belief of the individual praying seems to play a critical role in their perception of its effectiveness. Then, we discussed instances when prayer doesn't seem to work, where despite devout supplication, the desired outcomes are not realized. These experiences often lead to questions and doubts about the efficacy of prayer. Yet, they also highlight the fact that prayer isn't just about getting what we want, it's about connection, introspection, and spiritual growth. This brings us to the crux of the matter. The effectiveness of prayer might not lie in some inherent universal power that it holds, but rather in the belief of the one who prays. It's about the comfort, the strength, the sense of purpose it brings to those who engage in it. It's about the personal, subjective experience that transcends empirical measurement. So, as we conclude, let's rethink our initial question. Perhaps the question isn't whether prayer works, but rather how and why it works for those who believe in it.